Good afternoon. I notice I've been slowing down with my sharing, so less to say. No, always something to say, but I get caught up in these transitions, these periods of change, and it takes me a while to be with it, to sit with it. And it's not necessarily, I'm not really talking about physical change because I'm already at ease. Bring what the world, bring it on. Bring it on. And I can continue my practice of equanimity, and that is to take in whatever comes in the same level, state of consciousness. Knowing, it's all predicated on the security of knowing that all things change. Good things come, they'll change. Bad things come, they'll change. Good days, bad days, good times, bad times. All will change. That's the constant. And I get some sense of, maybe for many, most in fact, change is an anathema. Anathema? Anathema. Anathema. Better look it up. Anathema. They're resistant to change, in other words. And sorry if I struggle a little bit with some words, but I'm constantly in the state of improving my oral vocabulary to encapsulate my internal dialogue, my mental vocabulary, which is unfortunately, much bigger than, or fortunately, I don't know, much bigger than my spoken vocabulary. So I try to include words, and that means that sometimes I have to flub them, but I'll get it right. And the problem that I have with a lot of my vocabularies, I've never heard them used. I don't know how they really sound. I make up my own mind. I sound them out in my own mind. And sometimes I can get a talking dictionary, and that helps. And by the way, I've changed my background. The two pictures hanging there, it's really interesting. My mom passed in Valentine's Day, 1919. 1999, there I go, 1999. And recently my brother's gifted me with these two prints of hers that he found and he framed and he gifted them to me. So I moved the two other pictures that I had of me and the two paintings that my student did of me dressed in my Dalai Lama colors, my work outfit that I was planning to wear many years ago when I was going to open a healing center, I called it at the time. And I visualized an outdoor place that somehow was going to be gifted with some land. And on that land was going to be a spring, and from that spring, in concentric circles, I was going to build out. Many, many ideas, and I've talked about it. It's still fun to entertain. But recently I took a hard look at things and said, hey, I got a nice garage. Really nice. Clean it up and open my Zendo, put a sign out front, and open my Zendo, which I've done. On a very low budget, which is the best I can do right now. Even though I believe in abundance, and even though I'm always okay, suffice it to say I'm not flush, okay? Again, all things change, but I've always been okay. And I've always understood the abundance, and I haven't been greedy about. I've pared my needs down to pretty minimal and live best with that. And still look around and see a lot of things that someday I have to shed, or somebody has to come in and clean up after me when I pass. And I really don't relish it. I really don't want to leave a mess for anybody. But that's taken me far afield from where I wanted to start today. And that was beginning to remember. I have neglected, except for a few glaring exceptions, neglected the people less settled, less vested, that haven't really embarked, at least on a conscious level, embarked on their spiritual journey to remembrance, to remember the forgotten. And today I want to talk about beginning to remember. And I want to use a couple of different examples because it kind of shows at least in my experience, it shows different strokes for different folks. It shows that this happens to people in understandably in different ways, based on the time, their age, their personality, their experiences. Many, many things. Their honesty, self-honesty. We really have to start there, to be willing to scrutinize, wrinkles and all. Self-scrutiny is critical, and many don't make it past that stage. But my experience, let's start with that because it's the one that is closest and I'm the most familiar with. I was born remembering. I had no idea at a young age what exactly I was remembering, but I did always have a longing for some completion, some sense of wholeness that was missing. The missing ingredients, which turned out to be only myself. What else could be missing in a world that's complete? We don't always see it that way, but the world exists in wholeness, completeness. And it's up to us. This is what we have to discover. And we've always known this. That's what's so ironic in many ways. Well, I was born knowing, born beginning to remember, born remembering. Remembering the unity, remembering the wholeness, remembering that we're all, everything is expression of me, everything is expression of you, we, us, they, it's all the same. We're all the same. We're part of the infinite perfection. Even though, as I said before, we all have our idiosyncrasies. We all have our karmic debt, our karmic burden, our karmic reckoning. And I call it reckoning because the day will come when you have to reckon with it in order to discard it. Sorry. Until you can actually discard it. The ego can't die because the karma is what supports, encourages, guides, influences the ego. So let's start again. I was born remembering. And it's really interesting because this all was taking place in a non-verbal stage. I wasn't talking yet and I was already aware. And it's really interesting how life comes full circle because my understanding, my complete, or my more intense, my more inclusive understanding comes in a non-verbal arena. It just can't simply be captured in words. Words can, they have their use, they can point. They can encircle, envelop something that is of use. But words always, inevitably, fall short. So that's why in my own practice I've been minimizing the words. Because they're just obstacles. For the greatest part. So anyway, I spent a lifetime, an early lifetime, remembering. And it took me 60-something years to really completely remember the forgotten. Because I had my own karmic debt. I had to marry, I had to have a child, I had to work, I had to deal with the mundane world. And now, fortunately, I'm having less and less involvement with the mundacity of the mundane world. I'm finally free to a huge degree. And I have left my karma behind, and I have a daily practice, which I've shared before, that I utilize the violet consuming flame to consume the karma that comes with simply breathing in and breathing out. So once you rid yourself of your karma, you have to diligently be aware that new karma comes. And karma is action, work, or deeds. And it's really tough. I'm working on it, but it's really tough to live a life without words, actions, deeds. Really tough. But anyway, this diligent practice of utilizing violet consuming flame, and which has become so important to me, other than surrender, which is the most important practice. I wake up in the morning, first thing, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, surrendering up any idea of control, any idea that I had any influence on what was going to happen that day. Who knows? That's the beauty of life. Who knows what the next moment holds? I certainly don't. And if you do, good on you, but I might question that. But again, who's to say? Who's to say? But this was my path. And it took me time. I had to go through these things, and I had to reconcile. I had to deal with them. I still had some accumulated karma. And then there's something like my better half. But anyway, what I wanted to say is there was a conscious effort until I realized that was a setback too. That remembering the forgotten is really effortless. It's only when you surrender, when you give up, that you create the energy, you create the vibration, you create the consequences that you can fully remember and embrace. And be amazed at the simplicity. Once you get it, it's so simple. We wonder why we have all the drama in between the moment of non-abiding awakening, impermanent awakening, to abiding or permanent awakening. We really it's so simple. And in that simplicity, I guess this complexity, because that was the nature of non-duality, the inclusive of opposites. And that's my path. And it didn't come easy. 33 years of really diligent, rigorous sitting in the zazen, the Renzai zazen tradition, where I would torture my body and be uncomfortable. And one of the acolytes told me that meditation was war. If you didn't sweat, you weren't working hard enough. And, I didn't buy into that from the very beginning. And also I knew it wasn't La La Land, because it's harsh. The dark days, before and after. People talk about the dark days before awakening, but little is ever said that I've heard about the dark days that follow this abiding, permanent awakening. Dark days for me, at least, and I've got nothing else to go on. But I made it through it. Not unscathed, but came out, as always, from all experience, wiser for it, and actually thankful that I had the opportunity to grow. We never stop growing. Awakening, abiding awakening is permanent, but it doesn't mean it's the end, the be-all. We're just in kindergarten. There's a long ways to go to infinity, trust me. Constant spiraling, like our galaxies, like the arm on Milky Way that we're located, this spiraling is ad infinitum. So don't ever get lulled into thinking you can rest in your laurels. And that's why sharing, teaching can be problematic if you talk about a final destination, if you misunderstand, if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't seen. A teacher, first and foremost, has to be a student, or there's nothing to teach. And teaching is a tricky thing too. You can only pass on information to those willing, aware, awake, and that resonate with your being, which eliminates for most of us a great portion of people, of the souls. I've always had really modest aspirations. 5 or 10 solid students would sustain and fulfill, and I would feel blessed to have this kind of opportunity to make some difference, no matter how small, in this handful of souls. And who knows, maybe one of my 5 or 10 will be destined to reach a greater audience. I find much joy in that. But even if my effort, I would still put the same effort in 0 students as I would in 1 million. Searching, waiting for the one. I've opened my Zendo and As always, my timing's a little suspect because here we are wrapped up in the COVID-19, and people are really leery to gather in a group. So the chances of anyone joining me in my Zendo, but I faithfully sit there. I meditate for the hours that I posted, 5 to 8, 5 days a week. It's my public. It's the opportunity for the public to join my meditation, although I do meditate more than that normally. But this is my path, and I've shared it. This is what this whole started out with Zen with a smile, and then now I have this high young Zendo to celebrate the opening of my own meditation center, as humble as it may be. And then there's another path, like my better half. When she was 20, she remembered what she'd forgotten. She woke from her slumber, but she didn't pursue it, at least on a conscious level. She never was aware. She never had been exposed to the teachings and to different teachers like I had along my path. I met so many great teachers, and she'd never even heard of it. But ironically, her ego was shredded. Her ego disappeared. She woke up, and talk about blackness of night after awakening. She spent 20 years drinking a couple bottles of wine daily, trying to cope with no understanding of the momentous events that had happened to her. She was treated for panic disorder, anxiety. She was afraid to go outside. The truth can be brutal. But it does happen to those that seemingly aren't prepared. And it wasn't until she was well into her 30s that she began to find out about meditation. She began the alcohol. She just shredded after, a lot of years. If I do the math, 15, 18 years of never missing a day, of drinking 2 bottles of wine. And she's a little thing. Don't tell her that. She's a big thing in her impact on the world around her. But she started meditating, and that really helped. And when I met her, she was in the throes of her alcoholism and the spiritual world and the conflict. And I remember meeting her. I was introduced to her that somehow I might help her. But at that time, I was going through my own issues. I hadn't fully awakened at the first time I met her. I was dealing with serious health issues. I'd building up to a major heart attack, open heart surgery. And I knew that there wasn't, at the timing was off, there was very little that I could do. So she struggled. So think about it. I was born knowing that I was sleeping, knowing that I had forgotten, knowing and slowly remembering, but still had 65 years, 64, 63, maybe 63 years of intense struggle. And I went through a lot of teachings. Never did find the teacher. Met many famous teachers. Read, studied, put effort. And again, it wasn't until I gave up that I got it. That I completely woke up to what I had always known. But on my other half, then it took 2 or 3 years later. This was after I had my abiding awakening experience, after I had my open heart surgery, after I had had 2 or 3 heart attacks, that I met this beautiful young woman who now was coming into her own. She started, recently she's been doing stones. She made this mala from the beads that I used to have a bracelet, and I don't know if you remember, a bracelet and a necklace. And she put them all together, added some things, so it'd be a prerequisite 108, because my previous one, the person put together, just was a custom design, and it was my idea, and I didn't really know enough about the numbers, but Colleen took care of that. She's been making bracelets. She's been sitting, and it's so interesting because we've talked. She understands now that she came into this world because she was tired of waiting for me on the other side. She just said, "Oh God, this guy's so slow. I'm slow. I'm a slow study. I'm a slow mover. I've got tattoos of turtles." Because very much that's my spiritual animal, is turtles. So always had protection, always had a shell, always was methodical, and I almost always beat the hare, faster than a rabbit, slow and steady. But she wanted to just come and just like stir it up a little bit. Come on, come on, come on. You're running out of time. You've got work to do. She knew that I've got work to do, sharing and teaching. But I needed to finish up my karma, discard the ego, surrender to the inevitable, and discover the forgotten, rediscover. And she's not very patient. She's a multitasker, and she runs circles around me. But I've been working on these teachings since July 18th, 2018. I've been doing these 33-minute videos. It didn't start out at 33, but it morphed into 33 as I began to understand the importance of 33 in this number in my life. So I've been doing all the talking. This is my teachings. This is my legacy, be it as it may. Someday I'm going to transcribe all of these efforts, put them together in a book for 333. And I've also been working on kind of autobiography at the same time. But I see that as she gets ready to begin her teaching, that it really be her. And I'm in this Chinese environment, Taiwanese environment, where I don't speak the language. And she's a native Taiwanese, raised half of her life in Europe. She's a bilingual, bicultural. English is actually her first language, but I realize more and more, this is the latest epiphany that I've been having, that when she's ready, She will be the teacher. She will be the talking. My job will be to sit in my chair. She will have her chair facing the group. I will have my chair to the side, where I will remain in a constant state of meditation, where my responsibilities will be to raise the vibration in the room to the point that anybody with a little bit of sensitivity that walks in can feel it. This will be my contribution. I'll have long completed my 333 sharings, which was my end game from the very beginning. I've worked on simplifying my teachings. I've got it down to 3 or 4 things, which I will print on a paper, laminate paper, Chinese one side, English the other side. I'll place it on each cushion. It might be my job until someone comes along who will happily help set up what needs to be set up for the different sessions, the different teachings. It will be Colleen that will teach, share. I will be in the background where I was destined to be. So it was my job to get things rolling, but I had to wake up first. And she had to come and kick my butt, almost literally, and say, come on, get with it. So that I can leave. If I do, well, I will leave my body before she does. And I want to leave her with some structure, some legacy. Maybe my picture can be on the wall somewhere. Who knows? Not front center though, off to the side. But it feels really great to watch her grow. And we're to the point where we can start to have these conversations, because at first she said, I don't want to do anything to do with that. And at the same time, as she said those words, I knew that she knew that it wasn't so. So all I have to do is stick around long enough till she's ready. And I'm pretty sure I've got that in me. I'm pretty sure I can get to this stage. And you don't know how it warms my heart to know that what I have to share is of value to those that are ready, prepared to listen and to live. I feel good about that. I feel whole.